You want to see how to build this super easy, super fun wooden mallet? So do I. Let's go check it out. Alright, starting off with a nice piece of hickory here, we'll measure it out to 14 inches, which we will cut in half later on. But this will give us our overall length of our mallet head to be about 7 inches wide. And then we'll take this wide oak, mark about 3 inches. Don't really care at this point, I just want to remember because I will cut that on the table saw a little bit later. So now with that 14 inches marked out, I'm going to go ahead and cut a little bit over that just so I have some room on my table saw. But I'm going to cut out to a little bit over 14 inches, just to rough cut it. Make a couple passes before I go all the way through. Just helps ensure I do not blow out the bottom of my board. Now I have my wide oak here. We're going to cut all these pieces down to 3.5 inches tall. Gives the height of the mallet. And as I do this, it is a good 3.5 inch cut, but I make a crucial mistake right there. If you know what mistake I made, leave a comment in the comment sections. Let me know. Now that that's done, I'm going to not make that same mistake, but still cut my board down to 3.5 inches tall. And once that's done, I can go ahead and cut to my final dimensions here. I set my stop block up on my crosscut sled to 7 inches from the tip of my saw blade. And once I can maneuver around my clamp here, I can go ahead and send one piece through, again cutting it down to 7 inches. Once that's done, I can go ahead and push that out of the way, slide the next piece over. This makes sure I have it exactly 2 pieces at 7 inches. And now I can go ahead and set up my wide oak cuts, which will make the inside of my mallet head. I'm going to cut those down to 3 inches as I want a 1 inch gap in between on the sandwich. It'll all make sense later, but this is a wedged mortise and tenon joint, so I want a gap to be able to fit a tenon through that. So I'm going to cut this down to 3 inches because 3 plus 3 equals 6, and you have that 1 inch gap that equals 7. That gives us our overall length of our mallet. Man, I'm good at maths. So now that that's all done, we're going to go ahead and throw a curveball in here. This is a piece of wide oak and a piece of hickory, just like our mallet's going to be. The piece of walnut was not big enough, and size does matter, so I'm going to go ahead and make it a little bit bigger and glue these up. These aren't exact cuts, just something big enough, long enough that I can wrap my hand around, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to go ahead and throw some clamps on here, let that dry up, and move on and come back to that once it's dry. I'm over here at my table saw. I set a 2-degree bevel on this, 88 inches, and I'm taking my T-bevel here and replicating that angle. I'm going to take it over to my workpiece. I know this piece of hickory is 7 inches long, so I'm going to put my combination square at 3.5, which will give me the exact middle point of my board, and I will mark a 1/2 inch back towards my combination square. And I'll do it on the other side, and that gives me a perfect 1 inch gap that I can fit my tenon through. And I'll cut that tenon down. It'll all make sense. Trust me. I'm not a doctor. And I'll go ahead and put the middle piece there, lining it up with the mark I just made. Using that T-bevel with that 2-degree angle, I can move this piece to replicate that 2-degree angle, making it smaller on the bottom, thicker on the top. So when I wedge my mortise and tenon in there, that handle will not come flying out. Again, it'll all make sense. Doing the same size, using the back side of it, because I know that's what I set my bevel to, I can go ahead and scribe out the second line, leaving a nice 2-degree V shape, as I'll show you with my hands. Ooh, see it? All right, now I can mark the center of those boards because I want to hog out some material to make this a dead blow mallet. Using a good sized Forstner bit, just make sure it's an inch or greater, not too big so where it's leaving you no material in between. Hog out a nice hole as we're going to put some pellets in there to make this a dead blow mallet. So we're going to go ahead and get all that cut all the way through. I am using a backer board there so I don't blow it out, because that won't be fun on the glue up. And now I'm going to struggle with my glue bot for the next 4 hours. Just kidding. We're going to go ahead and dab some glue on there. I'm just trying to get rid of what's left of this Tight Bond 2 so I can refill it with my Tight Bond 3. No big deal. We'll go ahead and get some glue on there and start spreading it around. Once I find my glue spreader, man, I've been referred to as the Bob Ross of glue spreading. I can see it. I can look at those beautiful mountains. Oh, let's add some landscaping. Oh wait, we need more glue, Bob. Let's go ahead and fight with this for a little bit longer. Get some of that glue out of there on both sides, as there wasn't quite enough, and spread it around like your sandwich artist spreading mayo at your local Subway. Get it all nice and lathered up. Get every nook and cranny. Make sure you just can see those lines that you marked out so you know what angle to set those next pieces to. Once it's all spread about, you can go ahead and take those eyeball looking pieces that you just made, slap them on there, match it up with the angle, grab some pellets, good lead pellets, good solid material. Make sure you get them everywhere. You want to be cleaning up pellets for the next 2 weeks. If you don't, it's not going to work. So make sure you overflow it too. You really want to leave about halfway to 3/4 of the way full. You don't want it all the way full. You want room for those things to move around and absorb the blow. How that works, I really don't know. I'm not a scientist. And we'll go ahead and get rid of that glue bot and switch over to the Tight Bond 3 that I have, that I don't have to struggle with. And we'll get some glue on those eyeballs. Man, this thing's freaking me out. And we'll switch from the glue brush to our homemade glue brush, aka your fingy, and spread it around, making sure you get it in all the corners, and just as long as you don't get it on the pellets, rendering them useless, you'll be fine. Now, after spinning like a DJ, we can go ahead and move on to that top piece. Making sure everything's aligned, we can go ahead and set that on like so. Making sure everything's lined up using your eyeballs. You could probably use a square at this point to make sure that things are kind of lined up, but we'll go ahead and clamp it down to my table top. Some people will question, is this enough clamping pressure? Yes, it is, because I'm using my tabletop to create even pressure along the bottom. I can get a good enough pressure across the top to get a nice strong glue joint, and we should be good to go. Now that that's getting all set up, we can move over to our handle that's now dry. I jointed one side to make it flat, and then sending it through my planer just to get it down to equal thickness and getting rid of all the leftover glue. Dried glue, that is. You don't want wet glue on your saw blades. That is no bueno. And now that's all planed up, the mallet head is out of clamps, and now we're just going to clean it up. There's going to be some hanging out pieces because of those angles on the middle pieces. We're just going to go ahead and clean it up. I jointed one side to have a flat piece to reference against, and going to go ahead and clean up the sides. And now that I have good reference points for squareness, I can go ahead and make that last cut on my table saw. I didn't want to get my blade up too high, so I'm just doing about a little bit over halfway. Going to cut one side of it and then flip it over and cut the other side. My fingers are nowhere near this saw blade, so pay attention where your fingers are. Now it's all cleaned up, I'm going to go ahead and start measuring out my handle. I'm measuring for the tenon here. I want it to stick out or protrude a little bit, protrude just about a ½ inch. So I'm going to go ahead and take that reference point and going to go ahead and mark out the shoulders. I just want to make sure I get the orientation right on how I want my handle to face. I'm going to go ahead and mark out the shoulders for my tenon. And then I'm going to go ahead and mark out all 4 sides. I'm going to transfer those marks all the way around, making sure I have a nice square line. Then I'll go ahead and measure the width of the bottom of my tenon, which should have been mortise. It should have been 1 inch. It did get a little sucked in, but we're talking like thousandths of an inch here. I think I was 125 over 128, so I was just a hair shy, but it's okay. I can use that and transfer that over to my handle here in a second. But first I want to go ahead and get that top. It should be 3/4 of an inch, as that's the thickness of the inside material, and indeed it was. So now it's all done. I can go ahead and transfer those markings over to the bottom of my handle, making sure I get nice square marks. It looks like a nice game of tic-tac-toe down there. And then once I have those all marked out, I can go ahead and transfer them over to the face. Using my speed square, I'll mark those lines all the way down to the shoulder that I drew out earlier, making sure everything's nice and even. Now I'm going to raise my table saw blade up to one of those bottom lines, set it in place, and I'm going to take out these shoulders first. So the line that I drew is about 4 inches down from the top of my handle. I'm going to go ahead and get right up to that line and just really sneak up on it with each little pass, but I got it on the first pass. Since I have the stop lock here, I know that I'll get it on the pass on the other side. Don't flip it 90 degrees, flip it full 180, because those lines will be different. But those two are going to be the same, so I can go ahead and hit that shoulder again. And once that's all done, I can go ahead and remove the stop lock and completely remove all the material from this tenon. I'm using a 1/4 inch dado stack here. I didn't want to go too big and have to worry about other variations, so I just went with a 1/4 inch and took my time, made sure everything was nice and crisp and clean, and then went ahead and did the other line after I marked it out. And now I have my 1 inch by 3/4 inch tenon. Taking over here to the bandsaw. Sorry about the lighting on this, you guys can't see it, but I'm cutting out the slots to where my wedges are going to go to make that wedged mortise and tenon. So I'll cut those slots out, making a pass, just get it right to that shoulder, and then flip it around using my fence, making sure everything's square. I can get the same cut on the other side. Now that I have those cut, I can go ahead and make my own wedges here, just cutting it at an angle, starting off a little thicker, getting it down, make sure I come out of that piece real paper thin. I don't want to go all the way through the board. I want to come out at some point towards the bottom side of the board. So I'll go ahead and cut those wedges. It's kind of nice to be able to cut your own wedges instead of buying some from the local box store. Now I'm going to mark out 1 inch from the bottom and 1 inch from the top. I just want a nice bottom to hold on to. Yeah, I know what I just said. And then I'll go ahead and start just carving this up. I did carve it a little bit on the bandsaw just to get kind of the shape, but this is really up to you how you want to do it and what feels nice in your hands. Just give it a little test here and there, but just really get after it and carve up that handle to make it nice and smooth and splinter free. And then once that's all done, again, just smooth it out using a higher grit. I can start smoothing it out and really making it take shape, getting it to exactly how I want it to feel on my hands. This is for me, so I'm just doing this for me. Then I'm going to go ahead and cut a 2-degree bevel on the face just to give just a nice transfer of pressure as I swing down. You want to go thick to thin, thicker on top, thinner on the bottom, kind of like somebody who skips leg day at the gym. and get that nice little bevel on the face of the mallet. And once that's all cut out, we can go ahead and start sanding it. I did from 180 all the way up to 220. As you can see, I popped the grain between each sanding just to make sure I get all of the stuff I hammered in there out, leaving it baby smooth. Make sure I get all surfaces. Then I can give my handle a nice hand sanding, again, all the way from 80 up to 220. And then I'll put a nice little bevel on the face of my mallet here using a chisel. Just felt right. Just gives it less sharp corners. You don't want to ding the ends of your chisels or whatever you're hitting. Just prevents this thing from cutting into anything you're hitting on. Then go ahead and break the edges with 220 grit, making sure it's nice and soft. Go ahead and gluing up my tenon joint here, sliding it through the mortise. Make sure you start at the bottom. Make sure you know where you're putting it. If you do it from the top, you're going to have a hard time. You will break it, guaranteed. Now that's put in place. We'll go ahead and glue up the wedges that I made on the bandsaw. And I'll put them in these 2 slots that I cut. Gluing up both of them. Nice little decent bead of glue. Again, using that homemade glue brush. Spreading it around nice. And then sliding that one in its home. Are you too good for your home? Just go to your home. There we go. Now that's all done. Wipe your glue around. Make sure you get it all over yourself. Grab a mallet, because you need a mallet to make a mallet, and really just give them a tap, tap, taparoo. Make sure it's nice and seated. You don't want to go too crazy with it. You can break it. And then we'll go ahead and rip those up after they're dry, cutting off that excess, and then sand that top. Make sure it's nice and smooth. You can get rid of it if you want, but I like keeping it there. And then just engrave your logo using your Ortour laser. And then home stretch here using tung oil. That is Hope's tung oil. As in hopes that this mallet really works out for me. It was a lot of work. Just kidding. It was a lot of fun. But just using some tung oil here, I'm going to go ahead and finish this mallet. This hickory really does turn out nice once you get some finish on there. You do see it when you pop the grain, but it's still not as good as when you actually apply that finish. Making sure you spread it around, getting every crevasse, every nook, every cranny. And using the buffer pad, I'll just make sure that everything is going on. Add a little bit more tung oil, getting that bottom of that handle. Again, that nice bottom to hold on to. It never fails. And there you have it. Get some painter pyramids, let it dry, and come back to it. Alright guys, thanks for watching this video. Super fun, super easy mallet build. It's going to be sturdy and heavy, last a long time. Please hit that thumbs up if you haven't. Hit that subscribe button. And hit that bell icon to get notified on future videos. Please leave comments as well. If you guys have questions or want to see something in the future, please let me know. Without further ado, we'll go ahead and let Peyton take it away.
What does the scientist use to make his breath smell better?
What?
Experiment.
So do I. Let's go check it out.